to the Tuesday, April 12, 2022 Urban Mill City Council Lunch and Learn. I'll call the meeting to order and ask Nicole to take roll call, please.
Blake?
Here.
Carberry Montgomery?
Here.
Kroll?
Here.
McBurney?
Here.
Obrecht?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ask for a motion and a second to approve the agenda.
So moved.
So moved.
Wait a minute.
Seconded. I thought I did it first, but I don't know. Maybe I'm not loud enough.
Who moved it? I was not looking at the screen at the time, so.
I think Bridget did.
Okay, motion by Carberry Montgomery, second by McBurney. Discussion, roll call.
Carberry Montgomery?
Yes.
McBurney?
Yes.
Kroll?
Yes.
Obrecht?
Yes.
Blake?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And then I would ask for a motion to go into closed session to discuss pending litigation pursuant to Iowa Code 21.51C.
So moved.
Motion by Kroll,
Second it.
second by McBurney. Discussion, roll call.
Kroll?
Yes.
McBurney?
Yes.
Blake?
Yes.
Carberry Montgomery?
Yes.
Obrecht?
Yes.
Okay. And Mayor Android, if you'll give me just a moment here, I will get our stream paused and get the staff and council into the breakout session. So I should be moving
All right.
you. Some of you will stay on the WebEx just in the general session while we have the closed meeting, and we'll rejoin you when it is the appropriate time. Just a moment.
All right, thanks, Kroll.
They're waiting for the session to close for the first closed session, and then we will be moving into the next one when everyone joins us here.
Sorry. I don't believe that's one of our numbers.
Okay, I believe we are all back in the open session here on WebEx. I think as we moved back, it may have muted everyone here. So
Does that mean we need a motion to go back to closed session?
Yes, I need a motion to go back to closed session pursuant to Iowa Code Section 21.51J.
I'll go ahead and make that motion.
Motion by McBurney,
Second, Obrecht.
second by Obrecht. Discussion, roll call.
McBurney,
Yes.
Obrecht,
Yes.
Kroll,
Yes.
Carberry Montgomery,
Yes.
Blake.
Yes.
Okay, give me just a moment here.
All right, apologies, our open session participants. We'll be back as soon as we can here. So, Britt, thanks for hanging in there with us. We'll be back shortly.
that we cut off there, Matt, when we switched, but that's gonna be the sticking point, huh?
Yeah, and like from my perspective with HHS, they don't even have budget target figured out in the Senate. So anyway, but back to business I am.
Okay.
And Councilmember
All
Carberry
right.
Montgomery did have to step away for just a moment. She'll be right back, but
Okay.
she indicated we did not need to wait for her if you would like to move forward.
All right. Well, we're back in open session. We do have one action item, and that is to approve the mayor's bike ride for this year. So that's for motion and a second on that.
Motion to approve the mayor's bike ride.
Okay, motion by McMurray.
I second that motion if the mayor rides a fat tire bike.
I don't own a fat tire bike.
Oh, darn it, no, just second the motion.
All right. Motion by McMurray, second by Obrecht. Any further discussion? If not, roll call, please.
McBurney,
Yes.
Obrecht,
Yes.
Blake,
Yes.
Carberry Montgomery,
Yes.
and Kroll.
Yes.
Excellent, thank
And
you.
all council members must join. Thanks. So,
I will not be there this time.
all right, again, thanks, everyone for hanging in there with us. We're up to item 4.2, and that's to discuss the agreement with Furry Friends. And AJ, are you gonna start us off before?
I will, and I see that Chief Johansson is with it as well, and Britt Grange is there. Britt, do you want to wave so we can see you in the screen? There she is. Britt is the director of the Furry Friends Animal Shelter. Many of you are familiar with that. It's located on Mill Civic, across the street from the West Des Moines Police Department. We've had this relationship with Furry Friends since West Pet began. A very positive relationship. But as we move forward in the dissolution of the West Pet operation, which will take effect at the end of June, our conversations, both mine and the chief's, with Britt and her staff, concerning our desire to continue that relationship with Furry Friends as the landing place for animals that are brought in by our control operation, which will be out of Polk County now. Just as we've talked before, and just a real quick clarification, and then I'll turn it over to Britt. But at the same time, Furry Friends is as classified as a no-kill shelter. And that essentially means that they bring in animals and they house them, care for them, and do their best to adopt them out to a willing public. One of the things that we talk about that we run into, and another other communities who have been part of West Pet, is the feral cat related issues associated in our communities. And Britt has dealt with those within our community, live and in West Des Moines. One of the things that we want her to have a chance to give a brief overview is on the TNR program, which we spoke about previously. That is the trap, neuter, spay, and then release back into that neighborhood or that area where that animal, particularly cats, are taken from. We've supplied information to the council concerning the pros and cons of that program. And this is something certainly that Furry Friends is a strong believer in and how they would like to continue to operate. So part of it is just to give Britt an opportunity to explain the program and for council members to ask questions concerning that as we move forward with trying to finalize our arrangements going into the future. So with that, Britt, I will let you go forward and explain the program a little bit more.
Thank you. So we have been providing services to Urbandale as a part of our target community here for about a decade, but with a formal partnership for about 7 years now. And so then we had an agreement that then turned into 28E agreement. But basically, we provide services for all animals that come in through animal control. As well as we support all owner surrender animals and everything for citizens that live in Urbandale. So we've been very happy to be able to provide that support. We've also seen a really strong increase in animal welfare and being able to serve pets and their owners in the community of Urbandale since we have started this partnership. So we definitely want to continue to be able to support it. We're very happy to provide those services. But what we have noticed is as us beginning that formal relationship and being a no-kill community and one that is also open admission to Urbandale, we noticed a very, very, very large increase of animals that started to come in from the communities that we were partnering with. I think everybody was excited that we have no-kill solutions so that animals can come in. They're not at risk for euthanasia for anything other than what the true medical definition of euthanasia means. However, a significant portion of the cats that began to come in were cats that would be considered community cats or feral cats. These cats are animals who essentially are wildlife. They look exactly like domestic cats. There's no genetic difference. However, these cats have grown up in not in homes. They're not used to people. And when they're very small kittens and they're about 5 weeks old or so, typically we're able to turn them from hissy little lions into being pretty cuddly, and we can handle them and we can place them up for adoption. However, for a lot of these cats who have been out on the streets for a couple of years or so, it is extremely, extremely stressful for them. It's stressful for them and it's stressful for staff. And when we had a citizen that was actually from Clive, but we've had kind of pockets of people who have insisted that every single one of these cats should come into a shelter, that citizen ended up calling the governor because she was very upset that we temporarily stopped taking these cats if they were not sick, not injured during the beginning of the pandemic when we didn't have the PPE to do spay and neuter surgeries. That got me to really go back and look at the data to quantify what I felt like was a very, very significant burden on furry friends, and honestly something that would concern me about our ability to have long-term success and sustainability in our operations. What I had found is that in about 5 or 6 years, the increase of dogs that we had from the West Pet communities, the 3 cities, was about 8%, which would be about in line with the population growth that we're seeing in these communities. However, cats was at 142%, which told me a lot about what we were seeing. We're seeing a very, very large increase of these cats who are not socialized, who do not want to have anything to do with us, that are being impounded. This isn't an uncommon situation in the United States. There's a lot of communities. These community cats are in every single community. But what we are doing right now by saying, okay, well, we can place some of them in barn homes and place them out in the country. We can try to imprint them into the community, which requires about a 4 to 6 week process of trying to put them in like a 4x4 structure so that they don't immediately run off, is simply not effective and requires an extreme amount of resources that isn't sustainable. My staff is dealing with a lot of cats who are very, very challenging to handle. Essentially, they're handling wildlife most days that they're trying to work with these cats. And I believe that I've sent the chief over some videos of what it looks like to even try to approach these cats to determine if they need medication. When we have police officers who are bringing in these animals to us, they're getting bit. And then we have requirements by law to quarantine those cats for 10 days for rabies, which means they have to be quarantined in a separate cage, making it even harder to be able to care for them. So I think the question is, what do? We have citizens who call who are concerned about these cats. What sorts of calls are we getting about them? The majority of the citizens who are calling do actually have concerns for the cats. Now, that's not going to be every single scenario, but the studies nationally show that that is going to be like about 3/4 or so of people who are requesting something to be done with the cat. The issue is we can remove the cats that are there right now, However, there is a vacuum that will immediately replace those cats with other cats. If there is an environment that is hospitable to a certain type of wildlife, which the analysis for this is very similar to a lot of studies that have been done in Australia with threatened species, there's a lot of data about the vacuum effect. And so basically we can remove those animals, but then we're going to have new animals who are going to take their place that then will have to be removed. And the number of community cats that are out there, realistically, for those citizens who are asking us to just handle all of the cats, we would be one of the top budget items for the entire city. And I don't think that that's probably realistic. It's not realistic in any other community. And so in looking at what can we do, it is true that Furry Friends does not advocate and would not support a partnership that would say simply because these cats exist, they should come in and they should be killed. However, even those who are okay supporting that, you would have to kill so many cats. It would also just be unachievable from a resource standpoint. So what do we do then? The best solution that we have been able to identify from looking at nationally what works, what doesn't work, is to do a program called Trap, Neuter, Return. And that would mean that the cats who are out there who are not sick, who are not injured, and also not kittens, they're out there, they know to go to this lady to go, get some food, and then they go sun at this patio. Those cats would be trapped and they would be brought in to receive vaccinations to ensure that they can remain healthy, and they would also be spayed or neutered so that they're not procreating and creating more generations of cats. They would be returned to the environment where they come from, and so they would remain in that area, which would prevent additional cats from being able to move in that may not be spayed and neutered. Over time, that is successful in reducing the number of cats. Our issue is complex here in that the citizens oftentimes who come and say, hey, we want something done, they would like the option of that there would be no cats out there, whether it's that they don't care about the cats, which would be a minority of them, or whether it's that they care deeply about the cats and they want all the cats to be living in a home environment. It's just not reality that that can happen. And so our best case scenario is to try to do something that would be proactive, but also that does not overwhelm our shelter. Currently, in the past month, I have had to send several cats to our old location that is not accessible to the public because we have had points in time where we literally have 1 or 2 cats that anybody would be able to successfully touch without getting injured in the entire shelter. We have lots of families who come in to adopt, and we want to continue that to happen. But the toll right now in us continuing to try to approach this by trapping all of those cats and bringing them in and trying to put them through the animal sheltering system is simply too high. We're having to turn away visitors. We're having to pay for injuries to staff. We're having police officers get injured. And so that's why we're asking for City Council to consider an ordinance that would allow this to occur. And then as a part of the 28E agreement, we would change the mission and the focus of how we would handle those animals. There may be individual situations with one particular cat that could be a nuisance or could be an issue that may be handled in a different sort of manner, but otherwise what we're asking for is a shift in policy that we stop looking at simply trapping and bringing in as a way to be able to respond to those complaints. This would come at a significant actual cost reduction to the city because those animals would cost about half or less of the current arrangement that we are having. We would still be providing a lot of medical services, and so we would be putting the majority of the cost. We would also be shifting the responsibility of working with those citizens and educating them about this program and why this is an appropriate means of trying to provide support to those cats in those situations. That would fall on our staff rather than fall on the animal control officers. That would allow the animal control officers to focus their times on issues that likely are going to be higher on the priority list for the city, dealing with animals who have bitten, who may be dangerous, and dealing with those sorts of situations. So I know you guys have been provided some information about it, so I don't want to talk for half an hour about it. I want to make sure that you guys can get your questions answered. But that is what we're requesting, and I'm happy to answer anything regarding the program that we're proposing.
So Britt, you may have just touched on this, and I apologize, I missed it. What happens in those situations where, I mean, you've mentioned a couple of times where you have cats who are dangerous to staff, who are dangerous to officers. I can only assume that those cats then are also dangerous to the general public. Is that a fair assumption to make?
It wouldn't be. The reason why these animals are dangerous is because we are putting them in a situation where they are absolutely forced to interact with people. These cats, feral cats and community cats, would almost exclusively choose to run from humans as opposed to interact. But we are putting them in a situation where they're being forced to be in close proximity and have those interactions occur. And so that would be why they would be dangerous. Feral cats would flee. We occasionally do have aggressive cats. Those are almost never feral, and those are like owner surrender cats that may have some behavioral problems.
And in those instances where we do have cats who are aggressive, and what's the alternative? Because it's not like we want to necessarily release those back into the public if we're having issues with them.
Sure. And I can tell you, I guess I have literally encountered maybe one who I would describe as feral that was potentially likely to maybe come after somebody, but that also would be in close proximity. It really, these cats, they want to avoid people. It's just like wildlife. Most wildlife isn't coming down and trying to go after people. So, but if there would be that individual one, that would be what I would be talking about in terms of the nuisance sort of situation, that would be handled, separately. And so if there would be a safety risk that there's a cat that actually would try to approach people or so, then that wouldn't be somebody who would be eligible for release back to the community.
Hi, Britt. You had indicated that you were having success with kitties, like very young feral or pre-feral, I don't know, cats. So would you still continue to try and, what's the right word, make them into house cats in those situations?
Yes, so very young kittens, there is an important socialization window that occurs up until about 8 weeks. There's maybe kind of a situational case-by-case basis between about 8 and 12 weeks that some of those ones might be a bit more open. But yeah, you would need to be 2 pounds at least to be eligible to be spayed and neutered. Anybody who would be under that size, we would consider is likely going to be rehabilitatable. And so those would not fall under the TNR.
That's the word I was looking for, so thank you. And I think that seems reasonable to attempt to rehabilitate those little ones.
As far as the cost, you kind of touched on this, Britt, that long run it's more cost efficient. I'm just curious, how much does it cost the city right now to take a cat to your shelter and to house it?
Sure. And so under the current agreement, which Furry Friends has identified as unsustainable, but there is a $40 impound fee to bring each cat in. Typically, the boarding fee is waived because we aren't going to hold that cat for stray time. Nobody's looking for that cat. That cat doesn't have an owner. So then it would be the $40 fee. When Chief asked me to assess what the cost is on average of what Furry Friends spends on each of those cats, that is like a barn home cat and a feral cat, it costs furry friends about $755 per cat. And so on contrast, under the TNR program, we would be providing all of these services and the city would pay a fee of $20. It would cost the shelter approximately $85 per cat to work with the cats in this sort of framework under TNR.
And so we're cutting our costs in half and saving you guys a lot of money in the long run.
Correct.
What would be the turnaround time from picking up feral cats to getting them back to where you found them?
And so this would be an additional savings for the city too that isn't maybe quantifiable, but it would be the animal control officers would not be the people who would be coordinating that. That would be our staff. And so we currently do surgeries 3 days a week, although we are in the process of hiring an additional vet and expanding our clinic. So we would work directly with the citizens to have them trap the cat. They may trap it the night before. They may bring it in the morning of surgery, and those animals would remain with us for a period of 24 to 48 hours to ensure that that medication can wear off, and then they would be able to be returned after that point in time. So we would want to make sure that the anesthesia has fully worn off before we would release those cats, so that we would know that they would be capable of handling being outside.
Thank you.
Wait, and so just to clarify, so we're expecting the general public to capture these cats and hold on to them?
The general public would be using the traps. They would be bringing the cats to us, though. So we do have some people who we know are what would be considered feral cat colony caretakers in the area. So we do have some people who actually would be identified as being volunteers and being willing to do this. We will have a coordinator who will work from our agency that will work with coordinating this. So, but typically that is what they're doing now, is that the citizens are trapping the cats and then they are calling whether animal control is on duty or not, kind of depends, but I'd say significant portion of them people are bringing to our shelter themselves currently. So it would just change what the outcome and the process would be for that. But otherwise, the trapping currently is occurring through citizens.
Okay, but we wouldn't expect just, like, for instance, you wouldn't want me to have to try and trap a cat. It'd be a disaster. You think the injuries to the police are bad, I'd probably wind up in the hospital. So, but we wouldn't expect just somebody that's not comfortable with it to go out there and do that, right? We do have volunteers. Okay.
Yeah.
We also have, Larry, at the PD, we have a trap that is available. So we have that kind of as a stopgap measure. We've used it a number of times, but as Britta's mentioned, we have a number of citizens who are comfortable operating a trap situation and have trapped a number of cats and made available and taken to the shelter.
Okay.
What do you need from us, AJ?
Well, part of the reason we want to have the discussion, and as the chief and I have both talked individually to Brett about this is a policy-related issue. And this is one that, as I've shared with a couple of you, we've had some citizens who as Brett has alluded to, their solutions are far different than what is being proposed by the Furry Friends organization. And again, there is a cost-related issue. There's a handling-related issue. But we recognize that, this is a policy issue from the council that, as Britt mentioned, there would be the ordinance, there would be a written agreement within our 2080 agreement for this service as we move forward with our restructuring, that we would have this as a known entity, is that the public would know that this is how the city of Urbandale handles these types of situations, particularly, with the feral or the community cats, as Britt has mentioned. It's not to say that if some cat is captured and it has an owner, they'll still have the opportunity to come down and claim their cat, especially if it's chipped or identifiable. But we just wanted to make sure, because this has a degree of sensitivity to it, to a number of neighbors that we've had contact with, and I'm sure Britt and her staff have had those similar type of contacts with people who have very distinct opinions about how this should be handled. But again, as we move forward with this relationship, we wanted to make sure you as a council were comfortable with this notion about how we would proceed with this type of policy, and knowing that it's not unanimously supported throughout the community, but it has a lot of validity to it. So if you're comfortable with it, that's how we wanted to make sure that you folks had a chance to ask questions for Britt, and how she would be able to respond, and how they are still proposing to move this forward. So if you're comfortable, we can move this forward.
Well, I can say personally, I'm not comfortable with it. I feel like there's still too many unanswered questions, and no offense, Britt, to you, I think you've done a great job of presenting it. I do want to just do a little bit more research. You know, there's a couple of things that come to mind. I mean, one, I've already received an email from an avid bird lover who's like, I don't want these feral cats reintroduced back into my neighborhood because they're bird lovers, and we know that the circle of life happens, and I get that, and I respect that. You know, we've had in our neighborhood, even in the last week, we've had 3 cats running around. You know, how do you begin to determine the difference between a feral cat, a well cared for cat? What type of message does that send to the neighborhood when they're now seeing feral cats around? Are these now allowable, acceptable? Is it okay to have our cats run around? Those are the questions. I called just recently, literally last week, caught a cat in our garage, was able to capture the phone number, call the owners, and they're like, oh yeah, just let them out. They'll just wander back home. It's like, no, that's not how things work here. You know, and the cat was hidden up in our garage for, 4 hours, I think, by the time we were able to get it out. So, I mean, I recognize the bigger issue. I also recognize and thinking about AJ's message of a neighborhood that had 30 feral cats. Like, that's a different level of issue than our one-off cat. So I do appreciate that we need to be thinking on a policy level of what we do, but I do think we have to also have, what's the escape valve on this? What does happen when you have an infestation of feral cats or those community cats that, frankly, I mean, they might be community cats, but that doesn't mean people want them in their community. I have a spot on 70th where my kids always are commenting, or it's off of Tawana, but, there's feral cats there where they get cornered to stay in their car because they don't feel like they can actually leave their car to go to school. So I think there's more to this that I feel like we need to think about. And again, I recognize it's an issue. I get that. And yet I don't like the idea of just releasing and leaving it alone. If we have nuisance cats, we have to have a way to address that situation as well. That's my perspective.
I thought of 2 more questions while you was talking. First one being, because I understand through this TNR program, you guys click their ear. You do something that notifies the next person that if someone were to complain about this cat, essentially the response is going to be, well, we've already dealt with it to the level of our city satisfaction, so we're not going to do anything more, right, AJ? We've dealt with it based on ordinance, so we're not going to proceed, right?
Well, again, if the cat has been through a TNR program, that yes, I'm assuming it, that there's a way of knowing that it's already been taken care of, and therefore it will kind of, they'll move on from that animal. Am I correct, Britt, that there's one that you identify those cats that are in the program, treated and released?
Yeah, generally, unless we're talking about an animal is ill or an animal is injured, if we have those sorts of scenarios, then it may need additional assistance. But I guess where we are is that basically these cats are out there. The TNR program isn't being created so that we're going to like have more cats. The cats already exist. And so we have to try to do something because I don't think, I mean, the city budget, I can tell you our current agreement is not sustainable. And we also will not support those cats, you know, being killed simply just for existing. And so we have to try to come up with some sort of way to be able to recognize that these cats exist in numbers in our community, that I don't think anybody is prepared in either sort of scenario, killing them or trying to find, you know, other humane options for them. We are realistically going to put forth the resources too. So just simply because the cat is out there and somebody calls, yes, we would not be taking action just because the cat is existing outside. If we're talking about that there is, and I can gather that I may be aware of who the bird lover is, because I think that that's where we saw when we attempted to handle that individual, and there was a lieutenant or a sergeant who was assigned to trapping cats for that person specifically. We saw the number of cats increased in 2020 to 74% of all of the cats that were impounded in Urbandale were these community or feral cats. And so we've been doing that for years, apparently, according to that individual, for her, and there's still more cats. You know, we have to find some way to be able to get ahead of the procreation, but just simply because they're there wouldn't be something that we would act on. However, with those individuals, we can talk with them about using, there's like sprinklers that have sensors and different sorts of things for people who do not want cats on their property specifically, to be able to try to use some deterrents that are likely going to be more effective than removing cats and then waiting for the next to come in and then removing them as well.
And so with our process today, I know you said you had to quarantine cats for 10 days, but you guys are releasing them, right? If they're not, or what are you doing to cats? Because I know you guys are no-kill shelter, so we take the cat in, you guys try to find its owner if it has one. If it doesn't have one, after 10 days, you guys just let it go, right?
We're not allowed to release that cat back out currently. So,
Okay.
So no, they're
So it just
all
sits in your
being
shelter.
housed at the shelter, or eventually we can find, we try to find barn homes, but that is a more complicated process, similar to relocating wildlife, which is strongly discouraged. Cats have the same sort of issues in terms of being able to try to determine new territory when you move them out to a barn. But no, they are not being released currently, which is causing an unsustainable situation with our organization.
So then I guess I would say that if the action that we're taking today is not providing the result people are looking for, I understand they may not necessarily like the change or the thought of what we could be moving towards. I think we need to try something new. I think personally this is the way we should at least gravitate towards. It's more cost effective for us. We have to try something different, because if we continue to do what we're doing today, it's not working. We're just repeating the same failures over and over and over again. So I would personally be in favor of moving forward with it.
Just as a reminder, not going to take any action, just more of an informational.
Well, right.
Yeah, and if you folks
Moving
are
forward
in
with
agreement that this is
making
something we should incorporate, then we would bring that future agreement forward.
forward with you guys repairing it. Thanks.
This may be the only
G.
time I've ever
Sorry.
disagreed with Amy. But I guess I'm ready, I feel comfortable, moving forward. I had actually had a constituent reach out to me in the last couple of months, encouraging us to look into this. They had a situation here in Urbandale. They were able to get the ARL to come out and help with the situation because we don't have a program set up here. And I guess could we get some data or information? She referred to a program called CatSnip with the ARL in the city of Des Moines. Maybe we could get some information from them regarding best practices, or I'm sure Britt's already done all that, but maybe taking a look at their ordinance and seeing how they have, their metrics have hopefully improved since starting Operation CatSnip.
And they're definitely available as well. Des Moines, I was somewhat involved with the Des Moines change of their ordinance. That happened, I believe, in 2019. I have also followed up with several city council members in Des Moines since that program has been enacted to see, you know, are you having issues? How has this gone? And I would say largely there hasn't been any voice of significant complaint or concern with that. The ARL, that's been a drastic change for them, and they're very big supporters of that program, and definitely believe it's helped them a ton, because all organizations struggle with that. This is an unsustainable way of trying to manage this particular type of population. So, but Megan Weedman is the person who does that program, and I've spoken with her about TNR. They're really wanting the other communities to be on board as well, and she'd be happy to speak with any of you guys as well about that.
Chief Johansson, you got a comment, please?
Yeah, I was just going to throw a little information out as well, real quick. So we have a picture of everything that's going on here. Obviously, Britt has told you that the current way we're doing things is unsustainable for her organization. So that's one consideration. When we spoke to ARL about whether they would be an option for sheltering services for us in the future, they said they shot us prices that were, I can tell you, and I can send you the information, is the same prices that Britt charges for the most part. Now ARL, I don't believe is a no-kill shelter. But the thing that ARL did tell us that you need to consider while you're thinking about this is they don't want feral cats. They will not accept them from us in Urbandale. And when I said, because I asked them how much they charge for a feral cat, and then, you know, to be TNR'd, and they said, well, we don't do a TNR program for Urbandale. We don't have the resources available for that. So if you're going to partner with us, we will not take your feral cat, and you will have to. We encourage you to do a TNR program, but you would have to establish that yourself. So in other words, as I spoke to AJ about this, we would have to find someone, a veterinary or whatever, and basically create our own TNR process if we wanted to go with ARL. I'm not advocating that we go with ARL. I'm advocating that we stay with Britt. She has this process already in place and is ready to go with that. So just a couple things to think about. We really don't have another option at this point that I've been able to locate. Just throwing that out there. Thank you.
I'm just curious, are there other ways in which you manage feral cats?
Not successfully, which is why everybody is on, like, our shelters don't see eye to eye on all sorts of different things, but this is where, like, everybody in animal sheltering, Heinz 57, which does Waukee, like, all of us are on the same page here that it's clearly not worked to just impound them. You know, even those who advocate for killing and stuff, it's still not sustainable. And so this is really the best. And again, it goes back to, unfortunately, the choice isn't between cats and no cats. The cats are there. It's trying to do something that's proactive. And then it's our job to try to work with citizens and try to explain that to them. And we will take the time to do that, because right now we're expending tons of resources on this. So we can certainly spend some time. Some people may choose not to, view this, that way, but it's kind of like when you have situations like There's a study that recently came out that talked about like clean needle exchange and stuff. Like nobody's saying, hey, go use heroin, but like we have to realize at some point in time we have to try to do something to head in the right direction. And over time, that is the only way to try to reduce that population long term.
I do appreciate the concept, and I do appreciate your time today as well. And like I said, I just want to do a little bit more research. I have a call actually at 2:00 with a vet friend of mine who is going to give me his perspective on it as well. And yeah, we'll go from there. And I agree, it's an issue. I do want us to think as a council, what do we do when we have those nuisance feral cats? That's a sentence. You know, what's our way of addressing that type of situation? But that's for another day to think about.
I want to be appreciative of everybody's time here. It is 1:26. But at the same time, I think this is good information to have this discussion so you're a little bit more informed because, again, our contract with WestPet and the current arrangement they have expires at the end of the fiscal year, which is June 30th. As the chief mentioned, we would like to continue that relationship with Furry Friends. We wanted to make sure that you were fully aware of their position on the feral community cats and how they would approach that. And as a policy matter, how the comfort level of the council members is when it comes to addressing those issues. Inevitably, you will get a call, you will get an email from someone because we've had that record before where we've had complaints that come in. Not a lot, but again, it's just one of those things that try to have a full disclosure and transparency related issue associated with this conversation because it would be a formal policy if in fact you choose to go that direction. And again, I think there's been enough information. I don't want to speak on behalf of Britt and Furry Friends, but I'm sure they'd be happy to provide any additional information that council or the staff would need for that. And at some point, we will bring back in the very near future that 2080 agreement for your further discussion.
All right.
And if I may, Mr. Mayor, if I would direct this to Steve, I think, Steve, we're going to have to bring up your issue at a further date.
Yep, I just was going to suggest that.
Perfectly fine with me.
Thank you.
We can never talk about it. That's fine with me.
I appreciate your patience on this.
Okay. All right. Thank you for everybody's patience today. Good discussion on a lot of topics, so thank you, everyone, for that. I will ask for them for a motion in a second to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, and have a good remainder of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for using WebEx.